Buying a home is one of the biggest financial decisions, or it is the biggest financial decision that most people make in their lifetime. Since you're watching this, that might not be the case. Maybe watching through this, you're going to just have a better understanding of finance and you'll probably be able to accumulate more wealth and make other bigger investments. But I'm going to dive into the logic today of whether I should buy a home or not. And I have a unique situation, but this should be useful in helping you decide down the road or today even if you should buy versus rent. So let's dive in. Jumping in, how does this analysis help you? It can help you determine if you should buy a home financially and otherwise, whether it's primary home or an investment property. This logic is really core to making better decisions. And I'm going to give you a real example with real numbers. I'm a financial analyst by training. I double majored in finance and accounting, and I've also done the 3 CFA exams, not CPA exams. That's the accounting route, and then the CFA exams are more of the analyst route. Each exam covered about 2,000 pages of core study material, so I've learned a little bit about investing in financial markets. So we're going to go through and understand the numbers, but a really important piece that a lot of people miss is the hidden psychology. There's a lot of different trade-offs and opportunity costs to consider. So just kind of a quick look at numbers versus psychology. For most people, buying a home is not the best financial move on paper. Similar to paying off your highest interest rate debt first, that might not actually lead to the best outcome. Instead, it can make sense for people to pay off lower interest debt if it's smaller nominal amount, because that gives them motivation to keep at it. But just good to keep in mind the psychology side. Psychologically, buying a home, even though it's not best on paper, there's high opportunity cost, it's still the best move for most people. It's a forcing function that's going to force you to build equity and your savings overall. Your mortgage and costs of buying will likely be higher than the upfront rent that you might pay, but most people, they're not going to save that difference. So it is kind of building a just more equity or portfolio for people. Let's undo that. And there can be a lot of benefits, good life and family foundation and stability that comes with owning a home. But on the flip side, it can also limit your risk taking and growth. For example, I worked for 7 years at a company and I rented on a yearly basis. And if I knew I had more fixed payments, I probably wouldn't have taken as much risk with work. And taking that risk allowed me to advance faster, grow my income. So a lot of different trade-offs. Now, some other good things to keep in mind, a good general rule of thumb: don't buy a home if you don't plan to live there for at least 5+ years. The transaction costs are very high on both the buying and selling side. So the longer you can live in a spot, or the longer you can own the investment property, generally the better financially. And another pithy statement: rent is the max you're going to pay. A mortgage payment is the minimum. When you have a mortgage payment, sure, that's your fixed cost, but there are a lot of additional costs that can come up. So you'll need additional money and buffer to pay other variable expenses. This plays into that. Renters call the landlord to pay and deal with the issues. Owners have to call the plumber, the electrician, etc. It is very active work. Some months you might spend 5 to 10 hours trying to figure out how to fix things and who to pay, who to get to your place, etc. And a little fun statement here: property taxes are infinite rent. Even once you've paid off your mortgage, your local community is going to require you to keep paying them. Of course, that provides a lot of your local services for school districts, etc. A lot of good benefit, But that's money that essentially it's gone. It disappears, and it doesn't build your equity directly. All right, so here I am with a Phoenix Fox, I believe that's called. But the house I've been looking at, it is unique. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, 1,200 square feet, built in 1954. And this is a house that my grandpa designed. When they passed, my parents now own the home. And I would buy it from my parents at market value, which is very roughly $280,000. I'd expect that to be up or down $10,000, getting a more professional assessment. And one thing when buying a home, if you don't put down at least 20%, you're going to have to pay additional interest. This could be anywhere from 0.5% to 1% or even more. That's a small number, but over the course of a 30-year loan, even if you knock that off early, that payment, that additional interest, it can flip the equation to make it not make sense, even though it's small. And the first-time home buyer rate currently is 5.875%. I might qualify for this, depending on the state you're in. It's good to check to see your local programs. You might get a better deal, but sometimes they can come with strings that are attached that make it not worthwhile. And another really interesting thing a lot of people don't realize, some of these programs, you don't actually have to be a first-time home buyer. For example, I think South Dakota's program, as long as you haven't owned a home in the last maybe 5 years, you would qualify for this. The current 30-year fixed rate is about 6.27%. A small difference, but over the course of a 30-year loan, that does compound. And we can see here, Federal Reserve Economic Database, St. Louis Fed, rates have come down roughly over the last year to that 6.27%, but you could have gotten great deals 4 or 5 years ago, but hindsight, it's close to 2020. So should I buy a home? Should you buy a home? Let's look at the no path, and this is really the opportunity cost. So if I invest 20% down, instead of the down payment, I put it in other investments, which that's $56,000. If I put it in risk-free cash accounts today, I'm currently earning 3.75%, and that's over $2,000 annually, which works out to $175 per month. But there's interest rate risk. The Fed is likely going to lower the rate maybe 2 more times this year. I'm expecting at least once, but planning for 2 just with a wider margin of safety. And the other downside is here, if I don't touch this and just use the interest, if I'm not reinvesting it, this is going to be non-growth, and over the years, inflation is going to continue to lower the purchasing power of this amount. So instead, I could invest it in dividend stocks. I could get probably closer to 4%, pretty safe. Today, I'd probably get above 4%, but I'd add a buffer if some of the companies cut or lower their dividends. So I might start out with 4.5%, but I would give a buffer if it dropped down to 4%. So that's over $2,200 a year, or $187 per month that I could be getting if I didn't invest in a home and invested in dividend stocks instead. And there's one benefit with long-term capital gains here. Which I would hold these companies for a longer time frame, I'd be in a lower tax bracket or a lower capital gains tax rate, opposed to interest, which is actually taxed at your short-term rates. And one other big benefit, holding on to these for a longer term, I expect very roughly 8% annual growth of the fixed $56,000, but it would be a bumpy ride. For example, this in the first year, the market could go down and it might drop down to $40,000. But if I took this path right here, I just make sure that I'm not going to need to withdraw during a downturn. I'd hopefully be able to hold that for at least 5+ years, 10+ years, and just collect that growing pile of dividend income. All right, there is another opportunity cost on this path. If I wouldn't buy the home, I'm still going to have to live somewhere and rent. I could get roughly a good place for about $800 per month, or a more exciting route. I lived in my Tesla for a year. That kept my costs low, and that definitely helped me build up some savings where I'm even considering buying a home. And this property, it rents in a whole for about $1,750 per month. That's going to be good to know moving forward here. If buying the home, so there's that $56,000 that would go into it, but wait, there is more cost. So normal closing costs are around 10% of a home's value. So for $280,000, that's going to be roughly $28,000 just to simply transact the home, to move it from the buyer to seller. And oftentimes the seller is going to pay a higher portion of that. So the seller isn't going to receive a full $280,000. It's going to be that minus roughly 5 to 7%. And most of this here, 5 to roughly 6%, are going to be the realtor fees. This selling agent is going to generally get a little bit more than the buyer's agent, but that's split on their end. And as the buyer, I'd expect to pay roughly 2 to 5% with loan origination, title fees. There's a lot of other things that add in. And just for a quick look here on ChatGPT, here are some of the potential costs: appraisals, inspections, transfer fees, etc. But this is a unique situation, and with it being a family home going to family, potentially we could skip the realtors. There's a lot higher trust and knowledge of the property, so that could easily save 5+%. I don't think I spelled that wrong. Figma's spell check crushing me. All right, either way, that would be potentially $14,000 plus saved. But I'd still expect closing costs to be roughly around 4%. Could maybe be a little lower. And I'd maybe end up paying majority of that. So it's not only losing out on this opportunity cost, there'd be a little bit more because of this money that you sink into just transacting the deal. All right. So the monthly payment at the lower first-time buyer rate today, it's going to be $1,325, or at the market rate, average 30-year fixed, $1,382. But wait, that price is actually pretty good. Like, I'd definitely jump on that if that was the only price I'd had to pay, but there's more. So property tax, South Dakota has no state income tax, but they definitely make up for it with property taxes. It's higher than national average, roughly 1.4%. If I'd be renting the property out in its entirety, renters, landlords, they end up paying a little bit more, but that's roughly the rate I'd expect. So that's paying $327 per month just in the first year. Each year this would grow with the property value, and this doesn't directly build my equity. It's just gone. But wait, there's more. I'd also be paying home insurance per month. It's roughly $233, but annually you expect to pay very roughly 1% of the home's value. So of course that provides a good backing during a big storm, damage, fire. So you can opt out of it if you buy the property in full. You can, I believe there might be some states or regulators that don't allow that, but either way, I'd be buying this property for market value. I'd be taking out a mortgage, and the lenders are going to require home insurance because they have a lot more at stake, at least over the first 5, 10 plus years. So with these added costs, the first year fixed cost is going to be $1,900 per month. Now it's not looking so good if I could just be renting this property for $1,750, or given my lower cost of living, I could even do better, but there's big lifestyle trade-offs to consider. But wait, there's more. So I haven't yet included repairs and maintenance. This could easily be $300 per month. I could go 6 months without anything coming up. I could go a year without anything coming up, but that's unlikely. And maybe in year two, I might have $7,000 of expenses. But on average, $300 per month is kind of good to budget in. Plumbers, electricians, painting walls, cleaning carpets, even not even including updates. Like, there's a lot to factor in. And another really annoying one, the sidewalk. I'm liable for people walking on my sidewalk. If I'm traveling during the winter, I need to have that scooped, I think, within 24 hours, so I'd have to pay. Otherwise, the city would fine me. Just a lot of additional kind of hassles, maintaining trees, fences, a lot of additional costs. So total budget, I'd expect to pay roughly $2,200 on average, but over time that would be going up. The fixed mortgage would be non-changing. In year five, it'd be the same, and that is the farther out in time you go, the more this makes sense. The risk is a little lower, but of course in 5 years, property taxes might be $400, $500 a month, depending on how home values and assessments change. Same with insurance, that would climb. So there are the general kind of ideas on trying to decide if you should buy or rent. There's not really a clear answer. This is a family property though, so maybe I'm a little more inclined to keep it in the family and buy it, even if it doesn't make the most financial sense. And another big piece that would make it make more sense, I might rent out 2 of the rooms. Financially and all the additional work and effort to make that happen, as well as the risk and liability, paying a little bit more in insurance with a rider kind of tack on to the insurance. It still probably wouldn't make financial sense, but it would make more sense. So maybe a path I'll take, and if I do, I'll share more videos and logic. And another quick note, a lot of people say there's tax benefits to owning a home. But for most people, if it's a $300,000 home, you're not going to itemize. You're likely not going to itemize, and you wouldn't be able to write off the interest in taxes. You just take the standard deduction anyways. For a single like me in 2026, that's going to be $16,100. And if I did rent out rooms, I could write off against that rental income some of the home expenses. But that might be a video for another time. I hope you found this kind of clear look useful. If you have any questions, please let me know. And as always, I'd really appreciate it if you tap the like button and subscribe. I hope to see you again soon.